and welcome to the first edition of the Sideline Report. My name is Oliver Maroney. She is Jamie Hudson. The first question I have, Jamie, is kind of tailored on the Trailblazers seasons thus far. I'm curious, and I've heard rumblings about the starting lineup being changed. I'm curious your thoughts on the starting lineup and if it should or should not be changed.
I know, we've heard so much about that, Oliver. By the way, I'm very excited for the Sideline Report podcast to get going. We've been talking about it for a while now, Oliver.
Forever.
Yeah, it's finally here.
Yep.
Okay, so back to the starting lineup. I think it's really interesting when you look at the Golden State Warriors playing that small ball. And really, this Blazers team, you could go with that lineup if you have Allen Crabbe in there. Keep Aminu maybe playing, he's like one of your biggest guys.
Yeah.
I don't like that idea, though, Oliver, because I am all in favor of having the true post presence. Yes, Golden State is fun to watch. It's an entertaining, the small ball, all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm really missing that true post presence, the player that has those back to the basket moves.
Of course.
I'm missing that.
Well, I like the way Golden State plays, and that's the reason I'm perplexed with the idea of the Trailblazers going with Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and then Allen Crabbe at the 3 with potentially a Aminu at the 4, going like a small ball, and maybe even a rotation of like a Myers, Ed Davis combination at center. I think it gives the Blazers an added edge at the three-point line, and we've seen in the NBA thus far, the three-point line is where you win most your games. So I'm a little bit of a different opinion. I'd like to know kind of more of who you would have as your starting 5, I guess.
Okay, so you keep, obviously, Dame, CJ.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep Mason in there. Maybe I'd even put Mason and Myers, and I kind of want Myers back in the starting lineup. I feel like that's going to help his confidence and get back to not hesitating at all because you see Myers hesitating to shoot so often.
Yeah.
And then I guess you put I got to think about that last one.
No Aminu?
I want Aminu to come off the bench, but I guess I'd have to go with Aminu.
Yeah, he could be a good sixth man.
I really think so.
Yeah, definitely. Allen Crabbe's been playing really well as of late. He's my most impressive player this season. That's kind of leads to my other point, which is more or less who has been the most impressive thus far this season on this Blazers team.
It's hard not to say CJ McCollum because we got to see him being the leader when Dame was out for those 7 games.
Yep.
But I have to agree with you, Oliver, that Allen Crabbe, he has really stepped it up. His confidence is out of this world. No hesitation from him, and I love that.
Exactly. And CJ coming into the season, he was the guy that everybody knew was going to get more minutes and more playing time. And I think Rob Mahoney, myself, a bunch of guys in the media world had touted him to be the MIP or the most improved player. So that was an obvious choice of, going with him. But Allen Crabbe has stepped it up huge for me. I really like his play. And he, earlier in the season, he was just, his decision making was hesitancy and with the 3-point shot, especially with his 2-point shot too. And so I think he's just gotten this confidence out of him now. And then Terry Stotts has kind of rotated him in a lot more. He's getting more minutes. And when he gets more minutes, he gets more buckets. And the Blazers continue to have success with Crabbe in the lineup. So.
And down the stretch, who's in there?
Yeah.
It's Allen Crabbe.
Yeah.
He's always playing in those crucial minutes of the game.
Definitely. Yeah, no, he's definitely, I think, the most improved player this season for the Trailblazers, especially coming from the second round, too. Nobody thought of it, but Allen Crabbe is a steal of a deal in the second round. So, yeah, definitely. I guess the other interesting thing was Damian Lillard kind of getting his against some of the West Conference All-Stars in Chris Paul and Stephen Curry. I think he played all 3 of the Western Conference All-Stars from last year, if I'm not mistaken, and definitely showed up for those games. Do you think he should be an All-Star?
I do, yes, because we talk about those games, and he steps up his game because you want to battle against an all-star and show that you belong at that top level.
Definitely.
And like these last 3, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Oklahoma City Thunder, he has stepped it up, shown that he has all-star numbers. And so I definitely think he belongs.
Yeah. I I am on the fence, and I mean, I've talked to a couple people, and they're thinking, I mean, because it's really the fringe players that are in that discussion are Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and Damian Lillard. And it seems to be that way, at least for this season. And last season, it was DeMarcus Cousins and Lillard still in that same conversation.
Right.
If you're talking DeMarcus Cousins and Lillard, I'm giving the nod to Lillard every time, because Cousins, what he does off the court is just... He's got a couple emotional things. He gets teed up a lot.
So you do think that
I do think Lillard over Cousins.
Okay.
And I definitely think that affects the All-Star voting. But as far as Anthony Davis, it's a tough decision to make, because Anthony Davis, although his team is terrible, they're just not helping him. And Damian Lillard, they're better than what most people thought the Blazers would be this season.
Right.
So I think the argument is there either way. And so I'm kind of on the fence. I'd probably put Lillard in if I was to put my Blazers hat on and be a little bit biased there. But I'm on the fence either way.
Do you like the All-Star voting with this whole social media thing? Because, for example, Justin Bieber tweeted out about Chris Paul, and he got thousands and thousands of retweets. What do you think about all of that?
And it's interesting, because most of the voting has gone pretty smoothly. Like Draymond Green and Kawhi Leonard, guys like that are in the discussion, and they're in the All-Star vote, which shows that the fans really understand what they're doing.
Yes.
But the problem is then you have these celebrity votes, and that's where it gets a little bit crazy. I think they definitely need to change it up. I just don't know necessarily how they change it up. I think they could go with some media members potentially being of votes, and also coaches and players being part of that discussion.
Totally agree.
Yeah. As far as the Trailblazers are concerned, how do you like what Terry Stotts has done so far with the rotation?
I think he's done a great job, because it's been so surprising. Like you said, this Blazers team is doing better than what pretty much everyone has expected.
Certainly.
Or was expecting of them.
Yeah.
So given the fact that he has so many new pieces, and the fact that they don't seem like there's that many new pieces, they're really meshed well together.
Yep.
And having a leader like Damian Lillard obviously helps Coach Stotts.
Yeah.
But I've been impressed so far. What about you?
I've been pretty impressed with how he's coached. I think some games, late game decision making has been a little bit off, and we've seen some mistakes down the end where it may have not been, or down the stretch where it may have not been his fault necessarily. But I think some of the rotational stuff needs to be adjusted. Ed Davis, I think, should be in there a little bit more than he has been, because he's been a huge player for the Blazers this season. Alan Crabb also is in that discussion. And I do think there's a question mark over Gerald Henderson at this point. I don't know, does he stay with this team for the rest of the season? I think that's kind of the guy that the Blazers may look to trade, which I don't know. What are your opinions on that?
I definitely could see that. You know, CSN's Blazers insider Jason Quick talks about how Gerald Henderson's not fitting in this rotation. And you can almost see that even in the locker room. Like, he kind of seems like, well, not an outcast, because that sounds awful, but it just... It's not really
working. It's weird. It just doesn't make sense. And he's a really good player. Everybody thought he'd be that defensive stable hold for the Blazers, a 6-man, potentially a starter over CJ McCollum at the beginning of the season. People were questioning whether or not Henderson or CJ would be there. And I just don't know if he has a role, especially with the payroll that he's on. He's on, I think it's the last year of his deal.
Yeah, I think so.
So I would look to see if the Blazers may make a move. What do you think the Blazers need to get out of that?
Well, going back to your old defense thing,
at
the start of the season, that's what I thought. Oh, this Blazers team is going to be all about defense. You brought in Al-Farouq Aminu, Ed Davis, Gerald Henderson.
Yeah.
And really, the defense, it's been fine, but not what I thought. And actually, the offense has been more of the star power,
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's weird. It's really strange to see. The offense is ranked in the top 10 in the NBA, I believe, and the defense is struggling. And it seems to be like the rotation is part of it. It's a young team, so they are developing, and they've had a rough patch of games. I mean, really, they've been away from home way too long.
Yeah, and December was awful.
Yeah, I felt like I was at the Moda Center once every 3 weeks. It's crazy. But that's part of it. I think another part of it is who's currently hot and who's not, and really the offensive strategy behind what the Blazers are doing. I think CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard are a little bit lacking in the defensive category.
Right.
And everybody knows that. And so I think other players do have to step that up. But I've been impressed with how CJ's played defense thus far. Lillard had a strip, I think it was against the Clippers on Chris Paul late in the game, which kind of gave the Blazers a little bit of life. But overall, I think the defensive thing needs to be straightened out one way or another, whether it's through like a trade or if it's through like picking someone up. I think the Blazers do need to look outside for something like that. And I think Henderson is a huge piece of that. I think you look outside and there's a bunch of teams that are in that like championship contender area that need wing defending and need a veteran leader like a Gerald Henderson. You look at Houston, Phoenix, destinations like that kind of ring a bell when we're talking about it. I just don't know what the Blazers need in return. You know what I mean?
Speaking of like a veteran, do you think you'd try and look to see if anyone wants Chris Kaman as well? What do you do with Kaman?
Yeah, I don't know what you do with Kaman. I mean, he hasn't gotten any minutes this season. I think he's on a 1-year contract, so he'll be up after this season, from what I remember. And if you look deeper down, I don't know. You'd have to think that the Blazers would be looking at doing something. I mean, that leads us to kind of a bigger point, which is more or less, are we headed, as the Blazers organization, are we headed to a lottery pick, or are we headed towards the playoffs? And what are we looking for as fans, as people that watch this team? What do you think the best strategy is for the Blazers moving forward?
That's such a big question. In my years of covering a team and growing up an NBA fan, I never liked the idea of the tanking to get a lottery pick.
Yeah.
It's just, I think the competitor in me, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
But I'm weighing the options in, okay, you get the 8th seed, the Blazers get the 8th seed. They get that experience of being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about at least getting some kind of experience.
Of course.
Playing in the postseason. However, you look at the pieces of what the Blazers have right now and what you could build around Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum if you get a Ben Simmons, or they need another piece.
Yeah.
So I'm really on the fence. Do you go for the playoffs? Do you try and get that pick? I can't decide yet.
I am all in on the lottery pick.
Okay. Yeah.
And see, if we were a big market team, if this was New York, if this was LA, if this was a destination hotspot where you can bring in free agents and get them, then go ahead and try and get that 8th seed, because you have a selling point to free agents other than just the team and other aspects. You've got a selling point of a big market, and I think that selling point has diminished over time, but it is still a selling point. So, and when you look at teams like Golden State or smaller market teams, what they've done is they've built through the draft. Teams like Milwaukee, teams like Detroit, they've all built through either small trades that lead up to a player basically exploding onto the scene, or like the Milwaukee Bucks, they get a Giannis, they get Jabari Parker, they get a bunch of pieces to run around with some of their key guys, and then they make a trade for someone like Carter Williams, and that's how I look at most of the NBA moving forward, as far as like if you're a small market team. So if you're the Trailblazers, you get definitely a playoff experience if you're going to go and try and get this 8th seed, but you're going to end up playing the Golden State Warriors, who are by far the best team in the league right now and just pretty much exploded against us.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's really an advantage of going to potentially a 4-game sweep, or maybe you get a game and it's a good thing. But overall, I think you really need to keep that lottery pick, because it comes in value for this team in the long run. And it's something of trade bait too. I mean, if you want to put Gerald Henderson and a first-round draft pick together for another piece, you can do that. But obviously if you make the playoffs, that can't happen, because that pick, if people don't know, that pick goes directly to Denver if we do make the playoffs. So looking at the Blazers' overall strategy and what they've kind of assembled, I think it'd be so beneficial for them to get a draft pick this season.
And also, then this second half of the season, you could get more playing time for Noah Vonleh.
Yep.
Because this year is supposed to be about developing, right?
Exactly.
So Pat Connaughton could get in there.
Yeah.
Because we really haven't seen games where it's like down the stretch, the bench is playing.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and
I could see that.
Yeah, definitely, and it's strategic.
Right.
It's not tanking necessarily. It's strategic tanking.
Yes.
And there's a difference between the two. You know, you're going to play guys like Pat Connaughton. You're going to see guys like Luis Montero get a chance, and that'll give Neil O'Shea some time to kind of direct his attention towards who he wants to keep and who he doesn't. And that gives the coaching staff time to figure out what they want to do moving forward. I think that gives a better indication of where we're at as a whole and where you see guys moving down the line. You know, do you re-sign a guy like a Gerald Henderson? Probably not, because he's not getting much playing time. But if you put him into the starting lineup after the All-Star break, let's say, and he doesn't get traded and he plays out of his mind, maybe there's a case to be made where, hey, this guy's a veteran, he's a leader, he's doing what he's told. You know, it could happen. I'm not saying it. You know, it's probable, but certain things like that, we want to see Pat Connaughton get experience. We want to see Myers Leonard get experience. We want to see guys like that get playing time on the court, because there is nothing that adds up more to value than playing on the court and getting used to it. You know. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, what are your concerns, I guess, moving forward with this Trailblazers team? What are the red flags, I guess you could say?
Like long term or the rest of the season? You looking long term?
I'm looking short term, just the rest of the season. Where are the red flags that you see besides the defensive woes that we've seen? What's the one, I guess, out of the starting rotation? What is the one spot that we say that needs some help?
Besides defense, because I'm still real keen on that.
Yeah.
I really have liked Mason Plumlee's game.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's such a complete player. I mean, that guy is sometimes leading the team in assists
of course.
At the halftime mark.
Yeah.
But his post moves, I really just wish that there was some post presence, like a true.
Definitely.
I mean, I already talked about this a little bit earlier. Yeah. But that would be nice. Then it would actually take some focus off of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum if there was that guy down low that you needed the opponents to pay attention to.
Of course.
So I'm leaning like trying to get some big score down low.
Yeah, I definitely think that needs to be addressed. I mean, whether it's Ed Davis in there instead of Plumlee, Plumlee played excellent in his days in Brooklyn and really hasn't shown. I mean, every once in a while he shows glimpses here and there, but really hasn't put together a full couple of games where he's really dominated that post. And I mean, to be fair, the Brooklyn team that he was on was great while Brook Lopez was out, and certain aspects like that came into effect. But on this Blazers team, we actually have quite a bit of depth in that center and power forward position. Not super talented depth, but we've got depth there where you've got Ed Davis, Myers Leonard, Plumlee, etc. You go down the list, and there's quite a few guys that you could rotate in and out. I think that's definitely got to be addressed. Yeah.
And getting this veteran's presence, like that actually plays, because Gerald Henderson and Chris Kaman, I mean, I know this year it's all about young guys developing, but looking down the road, bringing in a veteran.
Yeah, we've got to do it. We've got to do it. I mean, we're missing a lot of leadership. I mean, Dame's done a great job with what he's assembled and what they've done in the offseason, obviously going to San Diego and getting work in and stuff like that. But I think you definitely need a go-to kind of player, you know, and I just don't see too many of them out there that are available to just kind of nab or grab. I think, you know, depending on how it looks overall, I think we may look to see O'Shea next season, or even in the off season, look to try and get a veteran leader in this team. Not just Kaman, but somebody who actually is in the rotation and really, you know, plays, because I think that does have an aspect on the team overall.
Looking years down the road, Oliver, because there's been some conversation of, do you build this team around Damian Lillard or now CJ McCollum, which I know is a bit crazy. It can sound a little crazy. But, Oliver, do you see Lillard and McCollum being this great duo, working together? What's going to happen there, you think?
I think they definitely are going to work together. I don't see anything else otherwise. They've obviously got to work on some of the transition on offense and on defense together. They both kind of struggle, and obviously we've seen one or the other get hot, but not both of them get hot. Similar to like the Westbrook-Durant kind of combination. Different players, different molds, but the idea is the same of both of them are really big stars and both of them kind of put all the weight on their backs, but usually one or the other is ahead of one another statistically, get night in and night out. What I'd like to see is more of a, go to the hot guy, which was exactly what happened yesterday, the day before yesterday, where they played Oklahoma City.
Right.
And Lillard was the guy to go to in the last couple minutes, and CJ was alluding to him in the last couple of minutes. So that's what we want to see more of, and I think they have kind of a special friendship. It seems like they're really, really close, and both of them coming from smaller schools, they both kind of have the same chip on their shoulder. I definitely see them as the focal point to the future of the Blazers. Yeah.
You talk about the friendship with McCollum and Lillard, and then Tim Frazier. It's like those three are always together. I
know.
Do you want to see more of Tim Frazier right now?
Well, I'd love to see more of Tim Frazier. He's shown me little glimpses here and there, but even when he started in Atlanta, he definitely looked like he just needed more time on the court. I sure hope that the Blazers get a D-League team assigned to them, and then they can go forward with potentially moving guys in and out of that rotation, because I do think the D-League definitely helps with guys like a Tim Frazier, who's been in that position in the D-League, but I think moving him there and then bringing him back up and having him as that number 2 point guard, I think that's definitely what the Blazers see moving forward. I just don't know how much longer we'll have to wait to see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I say, why not play him right now? Especially if we're going with your idea.
If we're going with their idea,
the lottery pick and developing the guys.
Lillard's got tons of minutes on his legs. Go ahead and give him some rest. Play Tim Frazier a little bit more.
That's something I question with Coach Stotts. Sometimes at the end of games, I think, okay, if you're down by 18, I know that this team never gives up, but why have Lillard out there?
Yeah, it's not worth the risk at this point in time. Obviously, we're not too far out of that playoff picture. I actually anticipated us winning about 30 games this season. That's kind of where we look to be, maybe a little bit more than that. But even with that, you're not going to get the 8 seed with that. And I think the coaching staff will come around to that after the All-Star break, hopefully, and we'll start to see a little bit more rotation changes.
I'm surprised at the bottom of West. They're not.
Well, here's the problem, is the New Orleans Pelicans were injured early on in the season. Now they're getting back to full strength. They should be able to put together some wins. The Houston Rockets are getting progressively better. And then you've got the Utah Jazz just sitting there at 17-20, and they are very, very good when they have Gobert and Derek Favors, who've been out for most of the season. And so it's going to be difficult. And no, we can still hold hope for the Blazers this season. I'm not telling you to bag it all in yet, but I think we'll start to see it slowly but surely as the season progresses, that the Blazers will probably be out of it. That's my expectation, but obviously, we've got to hold hope for whatever happens in the next 15, 20 games to see what happens.
Yeah, which, by the way, I can't believe we're at the halfway mark of the season already.
It's crazy.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I mean, it's strange how it happens. It feels like overnight we went from Summer League to this, and
seriously,
like halfway through the season already. Man, holy cow. Well, anyways, I think that wraps up the Sideline Report and our little chat. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll probably be back with another one here next month.
Yeah, sounds good. I had fun. Thanks,
awesome.
Oliver.
Yeah, thanks for joining me.
Yeah.